Halloween season, which means you are in the right place, viewers. Welcome back to Most Amazing. I'm your host who knows the most, and today we're gonna be cracking open conspiracy as we count down the top 10 recent UFO sightings confirmed by pilots. Alright, so, aliens are real, government told us that. So what do we do with that information now? Well, apparently it's reevaluate everyone we've ever called crazy for alien stories such as number 10's Ryan Graves. For those of us who keep our heads deep under a rock as possible, such as myself, Ryan Graves has been breaking the internet recently with his very vocal claims of UFOs, going as far to say that he saw them every day in his time as a Navy pilot. Now, the dude is no foil hat freak. He comes packing your usual high qualifications and certifications needed for this role. So Graves is a former Navy pilot and engineer, chairs of America Institute Aeronautics and Astronautics UAP Integration and Outreach Committee, and now the founder of the new nonprofit Americans for Safe Aerospace, which is like Mothers Against Drunk Driving for our atmosphere. Graves chose to testify in front of Congress last month about how he feels these UAP, which is the boring version of a UFO, are actually a threat to our security and safety. So in April of 2014, his FA-18 squadron was on a training mission, and he said after achieving 12,000 feet in what's an exclusive naval airspace, i.e. nobody can fly here zone, two jets crossed the threshold to find, and I quote, a dark gray cube inside of a clear sphere, motionless against the wind, fixed directly at the entry point. He goes on to say that the jets, only 100 feet apart, zipped past the object on either side. The pilots had come so dangerously close to something they couldn't identify that they terminated the training mission immediately and returned to base. Ryan Graves said that the flight leader, in extreme duress, told him, "I almost hit one of those damn things, man," in the pilot's ready room, and that we all knew exactly what he meant by those damn things, as they'd been plaguing us for the last 8 months. Having had this harrowing and potentially deathly experience, should things have been slightly different, Graves felt the need to develop a reporting service for pilots who come across these unidentified flying objects. Shedding light on a huge amount of investment that goes into the training of commercial pilots, Graves questioned the government for turning its back on the UAP reports, even though they all come from credible eyewitnesses. Number 9, which is the 2022 H0219. So, unlike America, Canada actually does have a UFO entry database for pilots. It's called KDORS, and it'll document anything from unruly passengers on flights to birds getting sucked into engines to aliens, apparently. As long as it's causing a problem and it's in the air, KDORS wants to know about it. Now, Transport Canada, despite having a reporting service for such things as UFOs, still cautions that reports contain preliminary, unconfirmed data that can be subject to change. And 2022 H0219 is the KDORS case number assigned to an incident that took place on September 17th of 2022, when an Air Canada flight from Toronto, quote, reported passing an unidentified object approximately 10 feet above the captain's window while making a left-hand bank at 1,300 feet just an hour before sunset. The report continues to mention that the flight crew couldn't identify the object, which is confusing seeing as it's 10 feet from the captain's window, and they went on to land without further incident. Now, the report wraps itself up with that, and trust me, if you visit the KDORS log, it's vague at best. But now you have a bit more context as to why they have that subject to change warning on their website. I'm not saying they would casually omit details, but you really think something was 10 feet away from the pilot and the airline's attendants' faces and they couldn't ID it? On to number 8, which is 2022 02794. Another KDORS flight sighting. So, there is quite literally no shortage of them. According to CTV, from unidentified objects to strange lights, Canadian aviation officials receive at least 16 unusual reports in 2022, including 11 from pilots flying for Air Canada, WestJet, Virgin Atlantic, United, and more. This report was made by NAV Canada on November 12th of 2022. It was a cargo freighter flying from Chicago to Frankfurt, Germany overnight. The route taken brings the pilots right overhead northeastern Ontario, where good things grow. The KDORS document, which was entered a few days after the incident, states that the pilots reported seeing lights that were moving eastward at the same speed as the aircraft while flying in the dark. Now, there's no further information on this one, but I sure wish there was. Number 7 is a break from KDORS reports. It's going to be the RACETRACK. So, veteran pilot Chris Van Forest told the Daily Mail of a strange encounter he had had in which 3 to 5 bright objects flew in a circular motion like a racetrack for hours on end over top of the Pacific Ocean in August of 2022. Their racetrack seemed to stretch from Honolulu to Los Angeles and then back. Similar to Graves, the 63-year-old Voris ain't some random dude in a tinfoil hat. He's racked up over 32,000 hours of flight experience working with multiple airlines, and when he witnessed this awe-inspiring yet decidedly creepy phenomena, Voris said that he was hit with an onslaught of other other airline pilots radioing in to ask if he was seeing the objects as well. Apparently, as he told Daily Mail, about half of his pilot friends have seen some type of anomaly in the sky. They had to be in a very, very high orbit, or actually even in space quite a ways away from anything that a satellite would be, because every time we were seeing it, it was in the lower right hand corner of the Big Dipper, no matter where we were in the world, he told the outlet. It lasted for such a long time that it actually became boring. Almost. Van Voris's employer, whose name is withheld, forbade him from speaking about the incident. However, that hasn't kept him from running his mouth, claiming to have also seen 3 flying discs in a triangular formation back in 2004. Number 6 will be the letter response. After tackling the dragon that is paywalls, I was able to scrape together the details of a letter written by Art Sabosky, entitled "A Pilot Explains UFOs for the Last Time." Now, to save you guys some time and the paywalls, Art's letter is essentially him complaining that he spent 45 years as a pilot and hasn't seen boo, and all his pilot friends haven't seen anything either, therefore no pilot could have ever seen anything ever, and if they have, they're either Mary Jane smoking or visually impaired. Essentially, you could title his letter, "I am mad other professional aviators have seen something and I haven't." Now, the whole argument of if I haven't seen a thing, therefore it does not exist is pretty much the argument of UFO non-believers. This is why Ralph Lowinger was quick to fire back a response. So UFOs don't exist because you and your friends haven't seen one? I know they exist because I was a co-pilot of a Pan-American cargo flight with 5 crew members who clearly saw their formation. It was on a crystal clear moonless night over Nova Scotia's south coast, and we all watched and saw the same thing through different panes of cockpit glass. Their dance was from another world. It lasted 5 minutes and terminated with the most dazzling feat of aerodynamics we have ever seen. I have now retired to the largest fly-in community in the world, in which many highly trained observers know that UFOs are real. Cataracts and floaters aside. Lowinger and other crew members never reported their sightings, but their story did come to light in 2011. Number 5 will be the skydivers. So this story comes out of the Virginia pilot Julius Figueroa in July of 2022. Julius had served in the Navy as a pilot for 2 years before getting a job in the Midwest as a skydive pilot. What would be considered an everyday venture, loaded up with his usual adrenaline junkies trying to touch the clouds, Julius and his passengers experienced a different kind of adrenaline-invoking experience. We were climbing 10,000 feet, and at around 4,300 feet, I was looking into the distance and this thing caught my eye, Figueroa said. It started getting closer and it was approaching me about 15 feet to my left heading north. Figueroa goes on to say that the object was spherical golden orb that was flying very fast, but interestingly, he reported that you couldn't see the object when you looked at it directly. Other pilots have reported the same thing during their encounters, and it does sound like an explanation for what happened even in our first story, where Gray's team didn't notice the flying anomaly until they were about to crash into it. Julia said that the object was the size of a small car, and without realizing it, he started turning his plane to the left. As the object passed by, Figueroa said he started yelling, causing the other people in the back of the plane to look out the window. 3 of the skydivers see it, including one of the instructors, Figueroa says. By the time I turned the plane, it was already on the horizon, and shortly after, the object was gone. Figueroa contacted air traffic control and asked them if they'd seen a drone on radar, to which they said they didn't. He called again and described the object he saw and asked if they had seen it. To quote him, there was a long pause on the other end, and then they said they didn't see it. Number 4 will be the Passover, and not the one with the matzo and the karpas. I'm still full from the last one. I'm talking about the weird and very underdocumented occurrence from June of 2023 in which a pilot in Toronto reported, and I quote, seeing a person in a wingsuit flying at an altitude of 13,000 feet. Now, articles did mention that this incident was filed with Transport Canada. However, even after spending hours searching KDORs, I was unable to find a report or provide a case number. But to give you an idea why this reporting is so weird, aside from everything about it, A, who uses a wingsuit nowadays? And B, this altitude actually breaches the death zone. For those of us who don't climb Mount Everest in our free time, the death zone is to refer to the point at which an altitude's lack of oxygen becomes insufficient to sustain human life. The average person tends to die around altitudes of 8,000 feet and higher, and it's all attributed to the physical capabilities of cellular oxygenation. So what does that mean? Aliens. Number 3 is gonna be our last CADORD report of the list. It is 2022-1004. Where? Kitchener-Waterloo area. For my viewers outside of Canada, it's a few hours drive from Toronto, Ontario, and it's a lovely little college town chock full of frat boys, geese, and hockey. And now, apparently, their new claim to fame is that there's some aliens all up overhead. During the daylight hours of May 28, 2022, local police were notified after multiple reports were received by local traffic of of unidentified object, possibly a balloon or a radio-controlled plane, at 3,000 feet and 7 nm south of Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario. It's incredibly frustrating trying to pursue more knowledge or information on this sighting, as unfortunately its documentation is limited to what I just told you. You'd think there have been so many witnesses and reports between pilot and citizens alike, perhaps there'd be more statements. What I did learn, however, is, since Ontario kept popping up for these sightings and I was curious, is that according to 2022 numbers, Quebec led all provinces with about 29% of all Canadian UFO reports, narrowly edging out Ontario, who has 28% out of the total recorded 786 sightings in our country. Number 2 is the Tic Tac. Remember Ryan Graves and how he testified to Congress? Well, he's not the only one who did. During a hearing before the House lawmakers, retired Navy fighter pilot and Commander David Fravor testified about his experience seeing what he described as a tic-tac looking object while on a flight back in 2004. Commanding the FA-18F squadron on the USS Nimitz, he and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich were on a flight off the coast of Southern California on November 14th of 2004 when they saw a flying object. The advanced radar on the ship was part of their training group and detected what operators called multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than a second. Fravor and Dietrich swerved over that way to investigate, each carrying an extra witness, the weapons system officer in the backs of their jets. Fravor recalls the experience. I said, dude, do you see that thing down there? And we saw this little white tic-tac looking object, and it was just kind of moving above the whitewater area. Fravor went in for a closer look. He described the tic-tac object mirroring his movement, saying it was aware we were there and that all 4 of us in the airplanes literally were watching this thing for roughly about 5 minutes. The object was about the size of Fravor's FA-18F, with no markings, no wings, and no visible exhaust plumes. When Fravor tried to cut off the strange flying anomaly, it accelerated so quickly it seemed to disappear. He said it was detected roughly 60 miles away less than a minute later. I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and capabilities that we had at that time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years. And coming in at number 1 will be the 7. So this ex-FBI agent named Ben Hansen is now the host of the Discovery Plus TV series UFO Witness. He works hard to try and bring attention to UFOs, and in doing so collects worldwide reports and videos he can share that are as credible as possible. He compiled accounts from pilots from Southwest Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, and others between August 6th and September 23rd of 2022. And in the captivating account we'll be discussing from this time period, a former military pilot reported seeing multiple aircrafts flying above him. Pilot Mark Hulsley was flying a charter jet on August 18th of 2022 off the coast of Los Angeles when he suddenly radioed in the following: "We've got a few aircrafts to our north here, and he's going around in circles, much higher altitude than us. Any idea what they are?" The confused controller responds, telling the pilot he's not sure. Hulsley then calls back 23 minutes later to say that the 3 aircrafts he had originally reported had now increased to 7, flying between 5,000 and 10,000 feet above him in a regimented pattern. While the controller continues to dismiss him, we hear the anxiety spike in Hulsey, who's absolutely adamant, stating in the recorded footage to the controller that they just keep going in circles. "I was an F-18 pilot in the Marine Corps, and I'm telling you, I've done many intercepts, I've never seen anything like this." According to Hansen, the strange lights that some pilots reported as possible aircrafts were seen by upwards of 15 different commercial flights, and that at least 6 pilots are willing to go on record with their names and everything if asked to do so by any investigative agencies. According to Hansen, it means in this case we have a global phenomena as far west as Japan to as far east as possibly Miami. Whatever it is, these pilots are seeing it from halfway across the world. Hansen said there's no official protocol for reporting strange sightings for civilian pilots because they don't think the FAA will follow up, or worse, they will be ridiculed. But as we know, Ryan Graves is working to change that. Hey guys, sure hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for having me. It's meant the world. Be sure to take some time to comment your conspiracies down below. Drop a quiet approval via the like button, or subscribe to this channel for more of our amazing content. Stay safe and stay loved.